All right, guys. Welcome, welcome. My name's Michael Dinsio, founder of Next Level Consultants, and you are participating in a webinar that's live today. Buy or build, which one's right for you? Um, we are going to be going over basically the pros and cons of both buying a practice and building a practice. And I've done this presentation a few times, and it's going to be super casual. If any of you follow me on my Facebook or Instagram or the podcasts, we keep it pretty light and chill. But big picture, we're going to just go through all the different options that you guys have to get into ownership. For those of you that are not familiar with this software called StreamYard, um, most of you are probably pretty familiar with Zoom. If you got questions, concerns, comments, go ahead and type over to the right hand side. I have greeted everybody there. It's there in the private chat that you can ask some questions. If you make comments, that will be live on the YouTube channel and our Facebook page. So you could do either way, but if we wanted to keep it private on this group here live, you would want to use the private chat. Either way, it works. Um, so, so again, welcome, welcome. We'll be providing you guys some CE in this presentation. So afterwards, be sure to scan the QR code at the end and rate the presentation and content. Hopefully, I do it for you today. But that is the way we're going to get your information so that we could give you the CE. So CE, yay. Okay, so it's 6:02. Still see some people popping in, but if any of you get in here later, this will be recorded and posted live on YouTube. And so you could always go to our YouTube channel and watch and listen and re-listen. And if you didn't pick something up the first time, you can listen to it again. And if you have any questions for me after this podcast or podcast after this webinar, shoot me an email, give me a call, text me, whatever it takes. But getting into ownership is pretty stressful situation. There's some names that I'm seeing pop in today, and I know some of you are going into ownership. Some of you are looking to buy, some of you are looking to build, and so it's a very stressful thing. And I feel like answering questions that you guys have is going to empower you to get into ownership. And so, whatever that takes, that's my passion in getting you guys all into ownership the right way. And so, I guess without further ado, let's get this bad boy cracking here. Let's get it going. So, okay, so a little bit about Next Level Consultants. We're a nationwide consulting firm. Um, we have about 60 active clients in 20 states. That's a little outdated. I think we hit the 70 mark a couple 8 months ago. So we've got a lot of clients across the country. Some of those helping you guys get into ownership. Probably the vast majority is folks that do own already and need help managing their business and keeping it running and profitable and efficient. And so we've got all kinds of services post ownership as well. We do billing and credentialing, fee negotiation. We have a hygiene only program that's fantastic. So if you have any hygienists that just need to relearn what perio really looks like and how to diagnose it and how to get more production just out of your hygiene team, we have that program. We have a front office only program. Um, so we just got a lot of different programs. So check us out online, nxlevelconsultants.com. We're redoing the website, so it's not totally up to date, but we've added some services and some team members since it's been updated last. But anyways, we're growing. We're a young team that has over 150 years of experience, I think, between all of our team members. And so, yeah, no, big picture, Paula Quinn and I at about 2018, 19. Since then, we've helped about 100 100 doctors get into ownership, whether buying or starting. And um, so anyways, big picture, guys, you use the knowledge today. It's free. Ask the questions, get what you want out of this. Because again, if you don't have all the answers, it's going to stall you out. And I will share with you that my story of getting into ownership for myself is a cool one. I worked for a really big bank, a big corporate group. A lot of you work for corporates. And I did well for them. I produced for them. I was a good employee. I had the retirement account, I had the corporate card, I had all the things, right? And there was just something missing. I wanted to do it for myself. And so when I started Next Level, I really didn't know what that looked like. I had a family of four at the time, and well, still. And I was the only producer and income earner, and we just made it work. And it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So ownership is the way to go, if that's what you guys want to do. And I'm here to support that. So again, founder of Next Level Consultants, co-host of two podcasts, Startup Unscripted, write that down, and Acquisition Unscripted, Dental Acquisition Unscripted, two very successful pre-ownership podcasts. Of course, the Startup Unscripted one is all about startups. So it's literally 3 years of episodes on how to do a startup. So tonight's gonna get the juices flowing as far as startups go. Well, that podcast is literally gonna drive it home. Dental Acquisition Unscripted is the acquisition one, and that's all about buying. And I think we started that one a year after the startup one. So it's running at about 2 years now, and have interviewed brokers and attorneys and marketing companies and phone companies and you name it. So it's a really great resource, guys. And so I'll leave it at that. Um, let's get into it. So what's the agenda tonight? What it's going to take to be an owner. I think that's important to cover tonight because I'm just going to say it, guys. Not all of you are probably cut out for ownership. It's true. It's not for 100% of you. I have some clients that make really, really, really good money as associates. I don't know if they'll make that much as owners, and that's a fact. And so, and maybe it's not about dollars. Maybe it's just about life balance. Maybe it's about family planning. There's some bliss in the fact that when you work for someone and the stress is on their shoulders, and you get to go home and you get to, I don't know, check out. There's some bliss there. And if you're making good money and you're hitting your financial goals, maybe not owning is the way. But if you do want ownership and you're thirsty for it, I'm going to tell you right now, the upside is hard to quantify. But what is it going to take to be an owner? We're going to cover that. What options do you have? It's simple. You've got options. You've got buy, you've got startup, you've got buy in, partnership. You got lots of different avenues to get into ownership. And we're going to get into some pros and cons of both buy and versus startup. Initial steps of each option. Of course, I can't go over every step of every option. That would be a 4-hour presentation. You guys don't have time for that tonight. I don't either. And so, again, the podcast will be something you want to check out because we do run from start to finish a startup on the podcast, episode 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way through to the end. And same with an acquisition, episode 0 all the way through to the end. So that is every step on the podcast. And then we're going to run some Q&A, again, chat. And yeah, so that's the agenda tonight. If you guys would like to add anything to the agenda, please add it to the chat. And I'll be paying attention to that. Some of you are driving. I talked to a couple of you today, and you said you were going to jump on the way home. So please do not chat while you're driving. That would be a problem. But you could always email me once you get home. All right, well, let's go. What it takes to be an owner. I am going to say this with sincerity and that is that it's hard to be an owner. You are wearing every hat in the practice business. You're the CMO, the CEO, the CFO, the salesperson, the director of human resources. You're the bookkeeper, accountant. You are literally everything. The clinical director. So it's a lot. As an associate, you're a clinician. That's it, right? And so, um, but it's going to take these skill sets that you have up on the screen. For those of you that can't see the screen, entrepreneur spirit is the first one. You got to want to be the leader. You got to want to own. You just got to have the the burning desire inside. The inside you. Leadership qualities, this is the next. Of course, you got to have that natural ability to be a leadership, or at least a desire. You're not going to be the best leader in the world. You're not going to just have it all, right? You can't have all this stuff, but you can't be scared of any of this stuff either. So if you're going to be a poor if you've got poor leadership skills, or you think you have poor leadership skills, take the leadership courses, read the leadership books, start following your leadership key opinion leaders out there. There's lots of leadership stuff. We coach on leadership stuff. So leadership is a huge, huge, huge thing if you're going to own, because now you are responsible for people's paychecks. You're responsible for customer satisfaction. You have to lead people to where you want to go. And if you don't have that trait or ability, you're going to be relying on your team to deliver for you. That's not a good idea. So, leadership. Next one, confident in your ability clinically. I can't overemphasize the fact that if you're just not dialed on your clinical skills, that's going to be a challenge. I do talk to a few folks that graduate and want to literally buy right out of school. It's a challenge. It's a challenge because you got to be able to hold up that practice that you're getting ready to purchase. From a clinical perspective, here you're buying something from someone that might have been practicing for 40 years. Uh, they might be a little older, but they're probably faster, right? And so you just got to be willing to well, not willing, but you got to have the confidence in your clinical ability. That's a fact. So, um, and that also is a very broad kind of statement. Go get some more training. If I get the doc, again, back to acquisition, that wants to buy a practice that the practice is doing implants, full mouth, this, doing root canals, and big endo cases, and that's the practice you're buying. If you're not comfortable with some of those bigger things, don't even consider buying that practice. It's just the collections are gonna just drop. So go get those skills so that maybe you could buy a business that doesn't have those procedures, and you can add that procedure. Okay. So again, just confidence in your clinical ability. You can be bread and butter dentist and be super successful too. So don't get me wrong. I'm just simply saying confident. Um, Okay, cash in the bank is the next one. I don't care if a bank is telling you need 10%. I don't care if this other bank's telling you need 5%. The fact is cash is king, and having cash in the bank before you go into business for yourself is just a good idea. It makes you uh, it gives you the confidence to make mistakes, and mistakes you will make, promise. It gives you the ability to get aggressive on marketing, or maybe an investment in technology when you may otherwise not be able to afford it through the practice. It gives you the ability and the confidence of knowing that even if the practice does dip, you're good. You've got a safety blanket. So just having cash in the bank makes sense. I don't care that it's a requirement. Everybody tries to strive for what the bank's requirements are. Forget that. What's your requirement for yourself going into business? I will share with you, the first time I went into business for myself, I failed inside 6, maybe 8 months. I literally sold one of my rental properties to live off of for that period of time that I tried to start that business, and it didn't work, and I blew, quote unquote, all the almost all the equity that I had in that house, that working capital. I blew it all. It was the most expensive um, schooling and training that I've ever gone through, but it was the best. It was the best. And so failing is a huge part of getting into ownership, and you got to have cash. Facts, especially if people are relying on you, like your kids and family. Okay, vision. This isn't one of those moments where some consultant giving you a presentation tonight is talking about vision, and it's kumbaya and Tony Robbins here, right? I'm like, you do need vision. It's a fact. Owners have to see where they are going. When we're coaching people in their offices and they have zero vision, what do you think the employees, what do you think they're striving for? What do you think, where do you think they think the business is going? So if the owner does not have any vision, then the employees have no vision. And so then the practice is just even Steven, everybody's just clocking in and clocking out. It's a job. So you got to have vision, period, end of story. Amen. And where you want to take it, and you got to be able to communicate that. So good communication skills, good vision. Grit is probably my favorite because you straight up have to have grit owning a business. It's stressful. Um, I feel like I look like 20 years older than I did when I started Next Level Consultants, and that's called grit, showing through in my age. You got to be able to take that customer coming at you. You got to be able to take a bad month in cash flow. You got to take it on the chin when that employee asks for a $5 raise on day one that you bought the practice. Like, what? Yeah, these are real stories, folks, and that's called grit. And you got to have some, because when we're doing work for buyers, buying practices and helping do the due diligence, I can tell you what the business has been doing historically, financially, for the last 3 years under that other owner's watch. I can tell you what that looks like, but you're not that same person. So is it going to change? Heck yeah, it's going to change. And when it changes, it's oftentimes not for the better. It's going to take a minute for the practice to reset and take off again. And so you're just going to need that grit to kind of get you through those ups and downs. Willingness to work hard and work long hours. Facts. I work probably harder than I did at than I when I worked at B of A. That's a fact. Um, but now our company's kicking butt, and we got all these clients. I can slow down a little bit. So, but it took a lot of work to get our organization, and I've seen it in my clients every single day. That first year, whether you're doing a startup or you're purchasing a practice, do not make the mistake in thinking that one of these options is easier than the other. It's not. They're different. They're better in some ways, harder in other ways. And we're going to go through that later. A desire to be a good business person. Truth, right there. You're not, probably most of you wouldn't consider yourselves good business people. I graduated and got an MBA. I walked out of that MBA school probably still not a good business person. I understood the theories, the facts, the books. I read the case studies, all the things, sure, but like practical business experience, no, was not a good business person. And that was an MBA. You guys had zero business training. So some of you might come naturally, others not so much. That's okay. But I wrote in this bullet point the desire to be a good and try to be a good business person, and that's just knowing your KPIs, staying on top of it, being a good leader, having vision, um, knowing your core values. tracking your numbers, tracking all the things, collecting your money, all the things that it takes. You gotta have the desire to do that. Don't think you're just gonna walk in, plug in, and just do your dentistry and then walk out at 5. It doesn't work that way. Um, yeah. All right. And the last thing is one of my favorite quotes. Excuse me, I had a cough. Um, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And maybe some really smart person said that. I I feel like I made that up. I say it all the time. It's true. I wish I could own it. I'm gonna own it. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable because ownership is so uncomfortable. And at first, you're gonna hate it. But then over time, you're just gonna, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. This doesn't feel good. Someone's coming at me. We messed up a treatment plan. Oh, we owe someone a refund. Whatever. Employees coming at me. It's uncomfortable, but you just got to harness it, own it, and know that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Just say, hey, I'll get back to you. I don't have the answer here, but I'll get back to you by, I don't know, next week, and we'll discuss options here. You don't have to know everything, but that's just being comfortable with yourself and your deficiency in business and whatever the situation is. So, all righty, that's a lot. It's a lot. I don't care if you're doing a startup or an acquisition. You need all that. That's a fact right there. Um, okay, let's talk startups. Some people call it de novos. So, starting a practice is the best thing and the scariest thing. So, building a business, you go to the lender, you get a $700,000 loan. That's a big loan, by the way. And you're a dentist and you know, they just gave it to you because you're a DDS and you got a little money in the bank. Literally, it's that easy. And now you get to spend it, right? And you get to build it and you got to get all the toys and it's in the area and you get to do the Instagram selfies and it's all super exciting. And then one day you're open and there's like no patients. That's the scary part, right? But it's perfect and beautiful in every other way, right? Um, and then the acquisition we're going to get into a little bit more is it's not so perfect. It's not really my business, but there are patients here today. And I got a lot of baggage with that. Got employees and all kinds of weird stuff that I'm inheriting and gonna got to make it work. And so here we are with the de novo. Let's talk. What is a de novo? Or what is a startup? What I'm defining it as is a practice that has no patient base at all. It can take up to 18 months, which is nuts. Probably as short as 9 months if you really went through fast. Um, and really these are kind of like if you were to take a picture here, these are the first few steps. And Next Level Consultants helps you with all of this, but these are the first few steps. Writing a business plan, apply for financing, evaluate demographics. Demographics, in my opinion, is one of the best things that you could do to safeguard and lower the risk of doing a startup. Too many startups, too many doctors. If you weren't on this webinar, you probably just call a real estate person because you met them at a trade show, or maybe you talked to Henry Schein and Henry Schein put you in touch with the real estate person, guy or gal, and they like, oh yeah, you want to be a GP? Cool. Um, I got a perfect spot for you, and they just kind of place you without any data, without understanding anything about the market, without any business plan. That's not really how you should do it. You got to put in a lot of work and time and prep into this endeavor you're about to do. And if you put that work into it, the results come out of it. That's the hard part about a startup is there's a lot of work and prep and time and strategy that goes into the front end. And the more time you put into the front end, the more, in my opinion, the more the easier it will be in the back end. So writing a business plan, that's not for the lenders. That's for you. Write a business plan for you, not the lenders. There's some consultants out there that say, "Oh, well, we'll help you with a business plan, and you're going to get a better interest rate if your business plan is awesome, and we've got the best business plan template, and we're going to walk you through that." You guys, that's stupid. It's not true. I worked for Bank of America. They did and still do the most startup loans in the country, hands down. Do you think they ask you for a business plan in the application? They don't. They don't. You don't even need a business plan to get that $700,000 loan. Um, do you need a business plan? Hell yes, you do. And who? And for you, because it's the plan. What are you going to do? What kind of patients are you going to serve? What market makes sense for the services that you want to provide? Um, what's the demographics? What's your competition? Um, what's the socioeconomics of the area? Do you need someone that's Spanish speaking at the front desk or not? Is it important that you can do ortho in house because there's no orthos in the area? There's so many things that you have to think through before you just pull the trigger and sign a lease. All right. um I'm digressing. So no patient-based startup. So write a business plan, apply for financing, look at your demographics. That's when you start negotiating the lease. Find a spot, negotiate the lease. A lot of things in that lease that can be major pitfalls. So partnering with the right person to help you navigate a lease. That's not me. I don't have a real estate license, but someone that does, has experience. That's really important. A lease sets you up for success. Hire a construction team. The contractor is going to take set 65 to 70% of your budget. The contractor. You also have equipment, marketing, IT, you have security, sound, you have all kinds of expenses, software, um, chairs, furniture, paintings, you name it. I mean, there's a lot of expenses, but the contractor and the construction team is going to take 65% of that budget. So you better walk through that process and be smart about it. Construction costs are out of control across the country. Wherever you all are in the market, construction's the most expensive piece of that. Picking out equipment. The equipment's super fun, but also dangerous. I hope I don't have too many equipment reps listening in, but I will say that there's probably a top 10% of equipment specialists that are just straight ninjas. They're so good at what they do. They don't ever sell. They are confident. They're not desperate for a sale, and they're going to help you pick out the right equipment for a startup, set you up solid so that you can build on that. But they're not going to try to hit a home run with you right out of the gate because you have a $700,000 loan. There's a lot of folks that I would kind of throw in that used car salesman in the equipment department. Um, Facts. So you got to be careful about that process. All right. So once you get through that project, which is super fun and also can be stressful without the help of maybe folks like us. Now you got to start thinking about the business. You got to move away from picking out tile and carpet and ADEC and scanners and nomads and all the fun stuff. And you got to start thinking about the business now. Go back to the business plan and start talking about marketing, hiring people. Excuse me, I got a tickle again. I'm getting over something. Every time I do this presentation, I'm sick for it. It's like it's a jinx. I got to start talking to my marketing department and tell them to quit setting this up because I get sick 100% of the time I do this presentation. Okay, so hiring. So now you're focusing on the business, marketing, credentialing, getting in network, hiring a team. I will talk pitfalls of hiring a team. Most of you will probably overhire and tell me that you can't find anybody that's willing to work only 3 days a week. I will tell you the number one reason why people call us next level consultants and say, Mike, I am literally about to go bankrupt. Um, I have no cash flow. I did a startup 18 months ago, and I'm literally about to close the doors. And the number one reason for that is their weight labor is out of whack. And their schedule is 5 days a week, 4 days a week. Team is working the whole time. Everybody's sitting around twiddling their thumbs. What are we doing here? It's all about efficiency, scheduling tight, condensing schedule, producing a lot of dentistry inside the hours that you are operating, and being super efficient. And that's what a startup is all about. And then you grow from there. So hiring a team, marketing the practice, of course. Marketing don't get me going. If you're into marketing, again, back to the podcast, we did a Shark Week not too long ago. Again, marketing companies can be sharks. They're selling you things. In my opinion, there has to be a smart strategy on how to market. And I always say it takes about 15 grand to figure out what marketing actually works for your business. And it's not the same. It's not the same every single practice. I could be talking to a doctor in Alaska, and then at 2 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock, I'll be talking to someone in New Jersey. And then at 8 a.m. the next day, I'll talk to someone in Kansas. You think I'm giving marketing strategies the same for all three? What kind of consultant do you think we are? No, it has to make sense for you. And so there has to be a strategy on how you market, and you have to track the success, and you have to understand the ROI. And then once you understand all of that, you double down on what works and you cut what does not work. It's simple. But you got to have the money and the juice to be able to do that. And you got to have the discipline to track it all the way through. Okay, projected income to make about 100,000 after the loan payments. A lot of people get surprised by that. Doing a startup on average, about 100 grand take home after their first year, and that's after loan payment. Fun fact, I don't think I cover this later in the presentation. Year 2, that number goes down. Fun fact, it's always the second year that's the hardest for startups, not the first. Go ahead and email me questions as to why, and I'll be happy to explain that. But it's year 2 that actually goes down slightly. Now, remember, it's really important that you continue that associate job at least 2 days a week. So if you're making 50 grand as an associate, make another 100 grand as a startup, you made 150 grand your first year as a scratch startup, you'd be pretty happy, wouldn't you? And then it only goes up from there. Okay. Guys, don't forget questions over in the private chat. I don't see anything. Comments. I don't see anything. All right, moving on. Moving on. The next option, acquisition. So we just went over de novo startups. Now we're going to talk about a little bit about acquisition. Acquisition is a patient base greater than 500. You're going to be like, well, what about practices that have patient base under 400? We're going to get to that. I'm going to give you a curveball tonight, something you probably didn't know. But an acquisition, in my opinion, is a patient base greater than 500 patients. So what's that process? That process could take 3 to 6 months to actually execute once you find it, once you find the practice. Once you find a practice, it actually should take 3 months, but there's sometimes it drags out for whatever reason. But process for that, find the practice. How do you find it? We're working on a tool that can help you guys look for practices in your area. Stay close to us. We're gonna release that at some point and partner with that company. But finding a practice can be tough. You gotta call all the brokers, all of them, monthly basis, bi-weekly basis, and hey, what's new? This is the area I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. This is the dentistry This is how much I need to make. Yeah, got anything? Nope. Okay. Call you in a couple weeks. Because the practice brokers are constantly going out and fishing for listings. That's their whole business. They're doing mailers, they're doing seminars like this, they're doing all kinds of things, and they get more listings. And guess what? If they're working on a listing right now and it's not even marketed, and you called this week, and, hey, I want to be in Pleasanton, California, whatever. The broker's be like, oh, well, I just signed someone. It's not ready, but I'll let you know. Now you're on to something. Now you found something that nobody else has. Everybody has their listings online, and you can look through those all day long. But calling the practice brokers consistently, connecting with folks like me, connecting with bankers, connecting with CPAs, being good friends with your territory reps at Patterson, Shine, Burkhart, Benco. They know people, they know things. Dental society meetings. I'm thinking of like study clubs. Get out there. You want to buy? Start having conversations. Go be looking. And if you really get desperate, we can help you send a letter out to an area. Letter drop, just like the brokers do. Hey, I'm a young doc. Here's a picture of me and my beautiful family. This is where I went to school. I'm looking to buy practice. If you want to sell to me. Let's start a conversation. You can solicit, just like the practice brokers do. We can help you with that too. All right. So the process of acquisition: find a practice, naturally. Negotiate the price. How do you do that? Make sure you're not overpaying. That's a whole other presentation. But that's why people hire us, is how do I know I'm not overpaying? So negotiate the price. It's a bullet point. Um, Apply for financing, naturally. Review the charts. That's called the due diligence period. You want to look at the clinical charts. You want to make sure that clinically you can handle it. Because, by the way, guys, sometimes those practice brokers don't really know what they're doing, and they'll just list a practice with very little information, and they don't even know the type of clinical practice they're selling. They're just selling a business that's throwing off 300 grand in Pleasanton, California. Buy it. But they don't know anything about the clinical. So, there's some really good brokers out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say don't trust the brokers. I'm just simply saying you got to do your own due diligence. You got to do your own chart audit, and you got to really know what you're buying clinically. And you're going to analyze the business, look at the financials, figure out what the opportunity in the practice is. I think that's really important because um, opportunity in the practice is how you're going to grow it, because we know that the practice is going to slow down a little bit, but because that's just natural. It's what's going to happen. But then how are you going to grow it? How are you going to offset that loss? And maybe it's adding root canals, maybe it's doing implants or doing clear aligner therapy. I don't know, but big picture, lots of options to grow. Again, that's what Next Level also helps with. Okay, negotiate lease, sign purchase and sale, rehire the team. Yes, rehire the team. They get fired from the seller, you hire them the next day. Um, Market the practice, basically do marketing, get that marketing strategy going. And the last bullet point here is projected to make 150 grand after the loan. After the loan. I've said that twice now. After the loan. The loans are not in the financials. So if you pull up a tax return, you pull up a P&L, you're not going to see loan payment. It's not in there. So what you're going to see is labor and wages and supplies and lab and utilities and software and insurance and all the expenses. And then there's going to be net profit, right? Well, the loan comes out of that. So net profit minus loan equals your take home. Your take home. And that's probably the biggest thing with acquisitions, is people don't understand how much they're going to make after the practice, after you close on the practice. And it's going to go down a little bit, probably. So you have to factor in the stress. We kind of stress test it. So you got to factor in the stress test. So again, patient base greater than 500. Again, I would love for you to make at least 150 after the loan. Okay, this is one of my favorites. Let's call it the fixer upper acquisition. I don't even really have a good name for this other than this is the fixer upper. All right, so this is patient base less than 500 patients. It's the exact same process, it's the same bullet points. The only thing that's different about this particular option is that it's projected to make less than 150 or less than 100 in this case after loan. Okay. I'm gonna tell you right now, guys, these are my least favorite deals. And I probably work more of these deals than I would like. And it's usually because my clients just want a deal. And let me share a story with you. I remember buying my first house in Bexley, Ohio, basically Columbus, Ohio. And the house was so old. And my dad had flipped a lot of houses and built a lot of houses in his day. And he goes, Mike, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, what do you mean? Of course, this is awesome. We're going to rebuild this thing. It's an old house and it's got character and it's pretty and it's cute and whatever, all the things, right? And it's Bexley. That's cool. And my dad warned me, he's like, man, you're going to spend more fixing this thing. And man, was he so right. I had to strip that thing all the way down to the studs, rip off all the flooring, redo all the plumbing, re-level all the floors. It was crazy. The only thing we used was the outside of the house, is the shell. That's it. And I'm telling you, it's going to hurt you. There is no sweet deal at the end of it. Now, that's not true. I take that back. That house is beautiful now, and I probably bought it for less. Of course, I bought it for less, but I put a lot of money into it too. So the point is it's going to take almost triple the work to buy this than to probably do a scratch start. And you're like, Mike, I'm getting 400 patients with this, and I don't need a $700,000 loan. I only need a $200,000 loan. True. So you got all good things going there. But the question is why did the seller not make it work? And I want to say this with I want you all to take away the fact that this is a general statement. I don't know any of your guys' situations. None of them. None of you. Some of you. Seeing the names. But like, I can't speak to each of you individually in your situation. How much cash you have, your partner helping, you got a good associate job, all the things. But like, most people don't treat this one like a startup. They don't do the demographics. They don't have a marketing budget. They're not getting the right lending. They just know it's a sweet deal. And I'm telling you, it's a lot harder to jumpstart these deals than it is to get a startup deal done and do it the right way and run the playbook. So be careful of the jumpstart. So of course, in priority, my favorite out of the three is probably acquisition number one, startup number two, and then my least favorite is the fixer upper, the jumpstart. As far as priorities go, they all can work. All of you have different situations. There could be a really good opportunity, no doubt. But this is my concern. So I think the key and the takeaway here is that you treat this jumpstart like a startup. You treat it like that, because if you don't, then you might overlook something, a saturation. Maybe the practice is competitive. I don't know. Maybe you would do a startup 4 miles the other direction when there's not as many doctors and be more successful, right? You're probably inheriting a lease here. Sometimes those leases aren't as good. With a startup, you get to renegotiate blank slate lease. So, all right, let's go over some pros and cons of doing a startup. Pros and cons. All right, scratch start, no patient base. The pros, you get to pick the demographics, which means you get to choose if you're going into a hotbed of a bunch of other docs or if you're going into an area that has no other dentists. You get to choose. Might not be an area that you want to live in, but that's going to be a choice that you have to make, but you get to choose. An acquisition, you don't get to choose that. Well, you do, but the practice is locked in. Location, space, of course, you get to choose the location. Sometimes these acquisitions are buried in the back end of some medical, dental, whatever. Um, but you get to choose that. A lot of acquisitions aren't filling the schedule, and the practice is too big. It's got 8 ops, 6 ops, and really, it's only got enough patients for 4 ops. So you got all that wasted space. So again, pros is really just getting the space that you want, space planning it the way you want, designing it, workflowing it the way you want. It's your dream, it's your vision. It's a blank canvas. The pros of startup is financing, dude. You can't get better financing. There's lenders out there that will literally like start you off at like the cheapest payments and ramp you up for like 3 years even. Load you up on working capital. Um, you know, just all kinds of great financing out there for startups. The facility, again, it's your facility. I think that's a pro. Again, buying an acquisition, sometimes the facility is a con. Um, New equipment, everything works. I would say most of my acquisitions spend a solid 10 to even $20,000 reinvesting back into the practice, getting new equipment. Oh, the hand speed's not fast enough. I can't do dentistry this way. Or oh, that chair doesn't work the right way I thought it was. Or oh, I'm a loop person, and so let's just get rid of these whatever. I mean, there's just always things. Oh, I have to have a scanner. This guy only does impressions. So there's usually on an acquisition, there's always like some equipment that does not work. Um, Obviously, startup, everything works and it's got warranties and it's perfect and there's no maintenance. So, pros of a startup is there's usually built in a marketing budget. So when you buy an acquisition, a business, there's usually not an extra bucket of funds that you get to market the practice. So if you're buying a business, it better be able to sustain itself. And if you have to grow it, then you better build in a marketing budget into your loan. Because if you don't, you can't market yourself unless you dip into your personal cash. And we talked about that tonight. So startup, they give you a ton of money to market your business. Excuse me. So that's a pro. Last pro, one of the biggest pros is you get to pick your team. Acquisitions, you do not get to pick the team. You better keep most of that team because they're the ones that drive the business. So, and sometimes there's some headaches on that team, cancerous, bad attitude, all kinds of things going on, and you have to keep them around even if you don't really want to. So, startup, you get to pick your team, and if they're not working, goodbye. I don't need you. I'll go get someone else because the goodwill is not with that particular team member because it's a startup. There's no goodwill yet. All right, cons. Well, of course, the biggest con is cash flow. No patience, no cash flow. There's a lot of things that we do in a startup to safeguard that. There's the loan payments that are graduated, there's free rent, there's a big marketing budget, there's working capital, there's you keeping your associate position, there's not hiring too much, too many people for too much. There's a lot of things that you can do to safeguard the no cash flow thing. Okay. But the facts are the facts. 25 new patients a month is 4 patients a day, 3 patients a day, whatever. Most of you are probably looking at 20 patients a day, and you're probably like, what is going on? And that's what a startup is, 4 patients a day. So you're building a business. You're building a business. So um, cons, unpredictable. Well, I don't know if this marketing is going to work or that marketing is going to work. I don't know if this new employee is going to show up or not. I don't know if um, you know, there's so many things. I don't know if our claims are going to get submitted and paid. Front office person said she's good at what she does. She might totally suck. I don't know. Unpredictable, right? So you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. There you go. Okay, juggling too many jobs or two jobs. This is a fact. You're going to have to juggle multiple jobs if you want to do a startup, unless you have a boatload of cash or your spouse, partner, friend, whatever is going to bankroll you. I told you in the beginning of this program, I sold a house literally to start my business. I had to do that. I couldn't do an associate job for 2 days and make my bills. I had to sell an asset and live off of it. So that's kind of what you're going to have to do with the startup. But you guys get to work 2 days or 3 days somewhere else, make some money, and get this business up and going. So that's how startups are successful. Cons, training the team and setting expectations and not having systems and creating it from scratch. That's all things that we help with, but you're going to take this journey on your own. That's a huge con. You got to do job descriptions. You got to know what their job descriptions are. What's the job description of a front office? What's the checklist on that? Oh, well, she's got 20 years of experience. She should know. No, she doesn't know. Okay. You need to have your own job description, your own expectations for what their daily routine looks like. And then you got to hold them accountable. And if they don't know how to do something, even though they said they knew something in the interview, you got to train them or get them training or hire next level to train them. So that's a con, right? That's a con. No systems. Um, and just big picture, I think you have to make more decisions as a startup. An acquisition, there's definitely decisions to make, negotiating points, but you're spending 700, sometimes $800,000, guys. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of decisions to make, and you don't want to make a mistake. So, pros, cons. Acquisition, pros, cons. All right, acquisitions. What's the pro of an acquisition? Well, it's the opposite of the con of startup. Cash flow. It's predictable. You walk in, there's 8 patients on the schedule already. And that's just in the hygiene column. Then you got 4 on your side. Yay! That's cash flow. So that's awesome. Turns out patients are grouchy, team doesn't like you or trust you. It's a procedure you're not super comfortable. The hand speeds are not right. Like, it's weird, right? It's not your business. Chairs are old, don't go down far enough. My back's killing me, right? But hey, there's cash flow. You guys picking up what I'm putting down here? So, um, back to that jump start. If there's no cash flow, well, why would you buy the business? Go to a startup. The whole pro of doing a startup is all the nice stuff. You get all the flexible financing, all the marketing budgets, you get to pick your team, all the things, right? Those are all pros. There's no cash flow. And an acquisition, there's cash flow, but you don't get all that other stuff. A jump start, it's like the con. I think that's what we're going next. I'm totally I'm totally telling you my next slide already. But you get where I'm going here, right? So but back to like a practice that is a quote unquote well-oiled machine. There's no such thing. But a business that has systems and is making money and has predictability, that's a big pro. There's stability there. Your family can rely on that. Less training is needed. Everybody already knows what their roles are. Does it need perfected? Is the practice doing the best practices? No, but it's predictable. People show up. If someone doesn't show up, there's a protocol on what happens when that person doesn't show up. Predictable, right? Less systems are established. And again, just in general, less decisions need to be made, which is nice. What's the downsides of an acquisition? Well, the clinical philosophy, in my opinion, is probably the downside. I try to coach a lot of my clients. Like, look, guys, I can like tell you the financials. I can tell you that the front office is weak and they're not staying up on the claims. The credits are high. Whatever the situation is, right? I could tell you, like, the fee schedules are not good. They need to be renegotiated and whatever. Wages are high. You need to let go of someone. I can tell you all that before you even buy. But the one thing I can't do is tell you if you can handle the clinical, right? And so the clinical philosophy is a tough one. And that's the greatest risk of an acquisition. I don't know the I always call it like a 40-60 split. I can probably eliminate 40% of the acquisition's risk by explaining and showing you the business and giving you the roadmap of the things that the practice isn't doing right, and glorifying the things that they are doing right. The 60% risk is you and your clinical ability. Because if you miss something, if you don't take that chart audit seriously, if you don't look at that schedule and look at how much time it takes for them to prep a crown, and what the blocks are, and uh, if they're doing full mouth, all on fours, and you're thinking it's just, whatever, like, that's a big thing. You walk in and your collections are just going to tank. So clinical philosophy is by far the most important thing you need to pay attention to as an acquisition, because if you can do that, it'll probably be fine. And but that's the con, and that's the risk, of it. uh let's see here. Inheriting a bad lease, that's definitely something that's on my list of, hey, look, like, we had a client that we worked with for many years, still work with them, and his rent is so expensive. He bought the practice. The practice is doing 1 million. He grew it to 1,200,000. That sounds great, right? The rent is so damn expensive. He has to do 2 million for it to really make sense. And he's constantly stressed because of the damn rent. Wages are in line, supplies are in line, labs in line, everything's really in line. It's just his rent's so expensive, and he has to produce so much just to make a good living. Um, so yes, the lease can be a con. And by the way, when you're buying a business, there's not much leverage to negotiate a lease. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the landlord and say, "Hey, I'm not going to sign this lease. Give me a better deal, or I'm going to walk away." No, you're buying the business. The landlord knows you want the business. They literally can ask for whatever they want. Otherwise, you're just going to walk away from the whole deal. There's zero negotiating there. Whereas a startup, everything's on the table. Everything. You negotiate everything. Startup. Another con is, again, location and demographics. Um, might not be the location that you want, or in the high visibility areas. Um, might be super saturated, so you might not be able to grow the practice through new patients. So now all you can do is grow it by services. That's a tough thing. Old equipment, definitely a con. I'm going to comment on this though. Don't buy a practice because of its beautiful equipment. Buy a practice based on the cash flow. I'm going to keep coming back to that. Cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. If you have cash flow, can you buy new equipment? Yeah. If you have no cash flow, can you buy equipment? No. But can you afford your bills? Either. No. The rent? No. Wages? No. Marketing? No. So buy cash flow and it opens things up. A lot of you guys are just really turned off by old stale equipment. But I mean, I talk to probably at least two or three a year. Like, oh my God, I could never buy that business. And I'm like, why? It's throwing off 400 grand. What's the problem? Oh, it's gross. It's gross. The equipment's old. I work at such and such DSO. They have the latest and greatest everything. We've got Sorona this, CAD CAM system that. I got all the toys. Well, that's great. You're not going to make 500,000 there, but that's cool. I'm glad you can tell all your buddies you got a cool like scanner where you work. Like, who cares? You can invest in that stuff over time. So don't get stuck on the equipment per se. You got to be able to go in and do the dentistry. I keep coming back to that, right? Keep the clinical work up. But I would just take it as it is and make your money your first year and then just start slowly investing into the business. Last con is HR systems. Guys, I've seen it so many times. The seller has zero HR, no manual, giving this guy this bonus, doing side deals here. People are taking off time whenever they want. There's no roles. It's like caged animals on paper as far as HR. It's a mess. And that's what you're inheriting. Because if you walk in and you want to put structure, you're the jerk, right? Imagine you walk in with your little like HR manual. All right, guys, I'd like you to sign this 25-page HR manual. And the seller had no HR manual, right? So you got to think about stuff like that, right, guys? It all matters. It all matters. All of it has to be looked at. All right, the fixer upper. Sorry, I totally screwed this up. Pros: low cost of entry. That's the pro. Cons: everything else. So, moral of the story is tread lightly on fixer uppers. I don't totally hate them. I don't. So if you're looking at a fixer upper, it's totally fine. It's just really consider that as a startup. Do all the prep, all the due diligence that goes into a startup like this on screen for an acquisition. Business plan, demographics, lease, all the things. Do a marketing strategy, know your competition, all the things. Because the more work you put into it, the better the outcome. So again, I am not saying that do not do it. It's not what I'm telling you. I'm just saying in order of priority here, my favorites: acquisition, throwing off more than 150 grand after the loan; startup, fixer upper. Okay. 4 first baby steps of a startup: vision, business planning, be super clear about what you're looking at. Back to the startup. So first steps of a startup. So too many times you guys again call that real estate person up and just kind of run with it. And I think that's a big mistake, because everybody in the process makes a commission off of you. That's a fact, right? And I'm not saying that like you can't trust anybody. No. Once you hire your team, you trust them explicitly. But a lot of team members just don't ask you a lot of questions. Most of the real estate people don't sit you down and say, okay, doc, are you looking to do Medicaid, or are you doing high end $60,000 cases? Like, they don't really get into the weeds. They're just like, oh, you're doing a startup, you're a GP. Okay, cool. I'll start looking around. But like, guys, think about it. There's a huge spectrum of all different types of business of dentistry. There's the Medicaid high volume, And then there's the like low volume, high ticket price. And those are all within the GP spectrum. And there's not a wrong answer, by the way. Uh, I'm starting to think you guys are sleeping, so I'm gonna actually quiz you. Who makes more money? Let's take it to a vote. Who makes more money, Walmart or Nordstrom? Go. Put it in the chat. I need 3 answers before I move on, or you're gonna hear dead space. Who makes more money on their P&L, Walmart or Nordstrom? I love it. Walmart's the answer. Calling you out, Diana. I'm glad there was someone. It wouldn't be fun without Diana's answer. Guys, Nordstrom's awesome company. High customer service, high touch. They don't even come close to Walmart's profits. So what I'm saying is the Medicaid high volume could be an amazing business. There's no wrong answer in what we're trying to do. But don't you think that's kind of important to know where you're at, what you're trying to do, how much space you need, right? And by the way, there's a continuum. So wherever you land on that continuum, that needs to be thought through, put a business plan in place, all of that, financing budgets, all that matters when you're going into a startup because if you're not super clear about that, then the rest of your team is going to fail you. The real estate person's going to fail you. The equipment person's going to sell you the highest A deck chairs there ever were for a Medicaid office. Doesn't make sense. You get cheap chairs in a Medicaid office. They're going to get their covers kicked off them after a few years, right? So, like, you know what I'm saying? So, high finish levels, beautiful uh, finishes, spa like feeling for the Nordstrom practice. Smaller location, you only need probably 3 ops. Your lab better be monstrous because you're doing huge cases. Still a GP. Now you flip over to the Medicaid, you need like 3,000 square feet. You need a bazillion ops. You need treatment coordinators up the yin yang. Don't get really high end finishes. Don't get really expensive chairs. It's just business. It has to make sense. Facts. So going into a startup, prep makes sense. And then you hire your team, and your team can then deliver what's in your head. But too many of you will just go to the Washington State Dental Conference next week and meet someone on the trade show floor and, hey, maybe we should do some financing. How much money do you think I need, Mr. Bank of America? Well, you should know how much you need. Let's put in, and then you approach them and say, hey, Mr. Bank of America guy, I'd like $750,000 and 20 cents. Like, that's how it should be, not what do you think I should do, guys? Right? And so, like, I would like for you guys to take the onerous of startups. Got to be better business people and go in with intentionality and purpose. If you can't do that, hire a company like us. We'll help you be very intentional through that process. But I think it makes sense because if you let your vendors lead you, do you think you're going to overpay in that? I'm just going to ask. If your vendors are leading you, giving you all the information, are you going to overpay probably in some areas? Yes, you are. That's the answer. All right. Acquisition, first steps, save cash, pull reports. And I mean as an associate, get familiar with production, pull your reports before you quit. Review your if you're wondering why, ask me. I want to make sure you guys aren't sleeping on me. Ask me, but pull your reports. Get familiar with your fee schedules and your production per week, month, year. Look at your non-compete, even though they're kind of illegal these days. If you guys didn't hear that news, I don't even know what that means. Don't ask me. but there's a lot of talk about how non-competes are not effective anymore. Um, which I don't even know how that's possible, but I'm sure someone smarter than me will figure it out. But non-competes, review it. And then I do think looking at demographics before you buy practices is kind of a good thing. You want to know what kind of areas you're looking, and you want to try to find a practice in. We talked a little bit about this. Find opportunities. You got to meet the practice brokers, network with the COIs, do some mailers, go to the trade shows and study clubs. We talked about all this. Get pre-qualified and submit the LOI. And submitting the LOI is non-binding. All right. So it's just an offer. I always talk about it's a dating. Okay. It's like dating. It's been so long since I've dated. I'm going to try to fumble through this, but like the way I would describe the acquisition process is as you're looking, this is you like downloading the Tinder app. I know it's probably not even an app anymore. I don't even know, but finding a practice, you're on Tinder, right? You're just swiping left and right. Yes, no, yes, interested, not interested. Practices. You're looking for practices. Swiping. The LOI is you made an offer to a practice and now you're deleting the app. I'm exclusive with you, Mr. or Mrs. Boyfriend, girlfriend. So now we're exclusive. But are we married? No. We're just dating. So the LOI is, hey, let's delete the Tinder app. Let's let's be exclusive. Let's make sure this works. And then the purchase and sale document, which is later on after the due diligence, that's the marriage certificate. So it's not binding to submit an offer. It's just saying, hey, I'm going to stop looking. Will you please stop soliciting your practice? Okay. So it's not super scary to make an offer on a practice. Do you want to just kind of make offers to a bunch of practices like crazy person? I don't know. You're going to ask a bunch of people to date you exclusively all at the same time, a bunch of offers. That's kind of weird, right? So no, it's not a great idea. But just in general, yeah, you could make multiple offers on two different practices, and if one accepts it, you take that other offer off the table. Sure, but big picture, um, you want to go into the deal with the intent to purchase. Don't just make a false offer. You got to try to perform on that offer. All right. This is the section of me self-promoting myself, but I do want to take a pause real quick because we're getting to the final leg here. I want to take the last 20 minutes if you guys have any questions. We're only going to go an hour and a half tonight, only because I'm struggling here with my voice. But this is kind of the part where I'd like for you guys to ask some questions. I mean, we've kind of covered a lot of different things. We've covered lots of different pitfalls. I would love to take on questions and answer some of the things that you guys are thinking about that are more concerning that I bet other people in the room are thinking about. Like Mike, how much truly could I make as a startup? Or, how long do I need to keep the associate position? Or how much cash? Like, there's got to be questions in your guys' head. Get into the chat, start asking some questions. I'd love to get into it a little bit with you guys. So I'll take a minute. Who's going to be the first brave soul? Diana, I think you need to redeem yourself with the Nordstrom answer. Ask your question. I know you're thinking of one. If you're on this webinar, you're thinking about ownership. So if you're thinking about ownership, it's a very complicated process, whether you're buying or starting. I see some questions. Keep them going, guys. I've done so many deals I can't even count anymore. I'm definitely over 500. I know some stuff, so get what you can out of me over the next 20 minutes here for free. All right, I got a question. Price negotiations after financial and in-office due diligence. Okay, I think the question there Tong, is can you negotiate the price after the offer and after you've gone through kind of like the financials? I think that's a great question. I think a lot of people get kind of stuck on that. So since it's non-binding, the acquisition, right? Excuse me, I'm so sorry for doing that in your ears, guys. Um, Basically, here's what you should expect before you make an offer and submit an LOI. You should expect the financials. So the broker should provide you the financials. The broker or seller should provide you the lease or details on the lease, even if it's just a summary via email, just information on the lease. So financials, lease, and definitely some production information, right? Because how would you know if you can handle the practice if you don't have the production information? So you can make an offer with those three things. I also like to know new patients, but that's about it. That I can determine value with those four things. You don't need to look under the hood. You don't need to like look at the schedule. You don't need to ask about Jenny the hygienist. I mean, you can for sure. I'm not saying you don't have to, but I'm just simply saying if you know that the business is making X, you can do evaluation because valuation is all based on cash flow and how much the business is making. If I was going to buy a UPS store, I would look at profit and it would be an X, a multiple of that profit. If I'm going to buy a dental practice, it's usually somewhere between 1.8 to 2.5 times profit. So it's just a multiple, right? And we can make an offer, but let's just say, for example, Tong, that we find something in the due diligence that is not cool, or some production that we noticed was not represented, or financials that were not backed up. Like we said, hey, you said your wife, you said the business made 350. Well, turns out the business only makes 250 or 200. Heck yes, you can renegotiate after the fact. Heck yes. But just know the seller could just walk away. The deal could fall apart. Um, Great question. The answer is you can absolutely renegotiate. You just got to tread lightly there. And I would just say don't throw offers in cavalierly. Be smart about it. Have the intent that you can execute that. Spend the time on the financials because that's the number one reason why you can renegotiate is because the financials weren't exactly clear on the front end. Next question. Do you have I have a fixer upper opportunity sold mainly as commercial space. What do you advise if I'm considering closing and remodeling and rehiring? Totally great. Just the whole team. Um, excuse me. I'm so sorry. We got to close this down here in 20 minutes. But the team, I I would look at that fixer upper opportunity as an opportunity, like just like the startup. You get in there, you see who you have, what the roster is. If you've got some A players, keep the A players. If you got B and C players, do not hire the B and C players. So I would really figure out what assets you do have on the team. It's like trading day, NFL draft day. Luckily, you've got a couple players already, but you got to be smart about that. And knowing that it's a fixer upper, you're probably only going to start out 2-3 days open. And so the new team might not be cool with the new work schedule. So there's a lot of things that need to be worked out in that situation. So my suggestion is meet individually each person at the coffee shop and go through, wants, desires, needs, all the things. And if it's a fit, it's a fit. And if it's not, it's a fit. It's not a fit, then it's not a fit. But I would side on the air of, yeah, you don't need any of that team. You don't. It's nice if they know some of the patients, if you're going to get some of those patients. But it's if you got rid of all those patients, it's the same decision for me. Like let's say it came with 200 patients. If half the patients left, it's the same decision for me. I would want to do that fixer upper because it's in the right area, it's the right equipment, the right demographics, all the things. And it's not because it's profitable and the team is great. It's just I'm buying it for the space. It's like a startup. Um, and yeah, if you remodeling, absolutely remodel. Don't go crazy on the remodel. The biggest pro is the fact that you're getting in for cheap. So don't mess up the one pro that a fixer upper has by overspending and remodeling. But if you, yeah, definitely, if you need to get new carpet and things, then absolutely do it. Some things you just can't not remodel. So yeah, but big picture, a iPhone, whatever your name is there, go into that kind of thinking that this is a scratch start, just cleaning house and rebuilding it from there. Okay, next question. Great questions, guys. What's the typical time frame for identifying the ideal practice for an acquisition? In essence, how long should we allocate for the search phase? Good question. I can't answer that. I literally can't. Um, what I can tell you in this very moment in time, since this webinar is being recorded and it'll be posted on YouTube afterwards, this moment of time, we're heading into summer. And summer is usually the dead zone of buyer acquisition activity. We always call the fourth quarter the Super Bowl. That's when all the deals happen. And it's because usually people are trying to sell their business at a clean end of year. The planners that you all are, you're like, hey, 2024 is it. I'm going to put my practice on the market in October. I'm going to sell it by December. I'm going to ride off in the sunset January 1, 2025. Right? So that's like the Super Bowl, October, November, December. There's definitely a lot of deals that trickle over into January because we missed stuff or they were complicated deals or whatever, whatever the case. So there's a lot of spillover into January. So I would say October, November, December, January is like the Super Bowl. If you don't find something and you've been looking for 6 months and you're through January into 2025, you need to be calling next level consultants and saying, I'm doing a startup. I'm done looking. So to answer your question, I would say the typical time frame to find a practice in my mind that's not going into summertime, but we are, is probably 4 months. And that's like looking aggressively, like calling the brokers, looking, doing all the things. 4 months, you could find something. Um, throw in summer, now we're at 6 months, guys. I always tell folks, I'd say most of my clients that sign up with startup services consulting are always the clients that have been looking for a while and they fall into a startup because they've been looking for so long. And I challenge. I see some from familiar names, some folks that I talked to later today. I challenge you to choose a date. If I don't have a practice by this date, I am committing to a startup and I'm going all in. Pick that date. What's that date for you? That could be at the end of this year. That could be at the end of the summer. That could be next month. Choose a date. And on that date, if you don't find something, do the startup. One of the pros of a startup, guys, get more questions in. I'm running out of questions. One of the pros of a startup is that it's templated. It's waterfall. We start today, we end in 9 to 12 months. It's a process and you will be an owner at the end of this. You just will. And it's very plannable. All right. Some certain processes do take a little longer, like finding a location. But once you find a location, you're going to be in business in 7 months, 6 months. So pick a date. If you know you want ownership, pick a date. That's the date you flip over to startup. Okay. But that's the question is 4 months is the atypical deal. Practice listing. Yeah. So to double down on that answer, I would expect more practices to go up for sale right after summer through November. That's when I would expect to see a lot of listings. That's when the practice brokers are very busy. They're getting a lot of listing calls because a lot of sellers are like, I want to be done January 1 and finish my taxes. So yes, that's what I would expect. That's what's atypical. Summertime, everybody's swimming and vacationing and doing all the things. The kids are home. No one's putting their practice up for sale during hanging out with the kids and getting sick like me. Okay? Great questions. What else we got? Over 15 years and 500 transactions under my belt. You guys only gave me 3 solid questions. Come on. Those are great questions. I promise I'm not going to send any invoices afterwards. We do have your emails. I won't send you an invoice. What else? No, do I have only acquisition people in the room? I did get a jump starter. Thank you. That's a great question. Any questions about startups? Who in the room is interested in startups? What are your biggest concerns? No questions about construction. I told you it was 70% of your budget. So if you're getting a loan for 700 grand, you're going to spend probably 400 of it in construction, 500 of it in construction. You want any pro tips on construction? No takers on some of that information? Tips on demographic research. Great question. Great question, a iPhone. Um, um, Demographics. So a couple things on demographics. So my favorite things in demographics are um, saturation rates, of course. So how many people per dentist or pedo or ortho or whatever you are. Okay. So, and there's different ratios for GPs, different ratios for pedos, different ratios for orthos. So ratio, saturation ratio is my number one. My number two is income, household income. And there isn't a wrong or right answer there. If you're after the Medicaid vision, you probably don't want to go in an area that has a 150 plus or 120 plus $100,000 average income. If you're going for the $60,000 spa practice, you're probably not going to go to a place that has a $60 to $80,000 average household income. Okay, so ratio, income. My next favorite is growth. Growth. So if my ratio is good and my growth in the area is good, then guess what? It's only going to get it better because the ratio keeps getting better for me because there's a lot of growth in the area. So that's kind of like my defensive measure to the ratio. Or if another startup goes into the area and it's growing, we're probably going to be okay. Do you see what I mean? So, but if you're going into an area that's already thin ratio and the growth is negative or there's no more growth, that's not a good thing. It's risky, right? So I always ask myself, can I eat today? When I coach my clients, I think, can we eat today? Because a lot of real estate brokers, facts, this is a real story. A lot of real estate brokers say, oh, it's going to be awesome. There's like a master plan community right over here. It's going to be amazing. There's like 2 houses, and the master plan's a 10-year plan. I can't eat today, but hell, I'll be able to eat in 10 years. That's cool. Like, what? Like, don't chase master plan communities right up the road. You got to look at, can you eat today? That is your defensive measure. That's your okay, I'm going to be able to eat today and tomorrow. Look at this. You see what I'm saying, guys? So growth matters, ratio matters. Uh and then my last X factor on demographics is data isn't everything. Meaning I've had some startups where it said it was very saturated and the ratios were not great. And he's like, no, no, no. Ratios are going to be are awesome. I don't know. I don't believe this. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I called around all these other offices and they're 8 months out on new patients. So you still have to do your own research. You still have to call and be a silent shopper and pay attention to what's actually happening, because data is data. Census is census. Like, it can be weird. It can be off. Sometimes there's like highways on the map, and it's like, yeah, this ratio, this 5 mile ratio is showing really good stats, but right through it is a highway, and everybody on this side of the highway never comes on the other side of the highway because of people's shopping patterns. They go 2 miles the other way to the grocery store instead of just crossing over the highway to the grocery store that's only a mile away. It's just how it's, or rivers, or you got to know the area. Uh, so that's my tips. That's my tips. So um, it's it's a cheap insurance. You have to do it. You got to look at it, but it's not the Bible either. So that's my tips on demographic stuff. Good stuff. Good question. Any other startup questions as we hit the hour-and-a-half mark? I'm gonna give you guys a last minute kind of shot clock here. If you're interested in the podcast, I talked a lot about it tonight. Scan that QR code right there. It'll take you to the website. The red side is the startup side. The blue side is the acquisition side. I mean, guys, there's 3 years of content, startup content, 2 years of acquisition content. It's this webinar on crack. It literally is. So check it out. Start following. Start listening. It's not going to tell you everything, but it's definitely going to give you a lot of good stuff. So startup unscripted, dental acquisition unscripted. Going to get a lot of answers on both of these options. And if you're not sure you want to do a startup, start listening to Startup. It'll empower you, because there is a playbook. So go ahead and take a scan of that. The other thing I'm going to call out is we got some events coming up. We got kids teeth week. I'm flying up to Toronto, speaking at the AAPD. We do a lot of peds at Next Level, and so we're going to speak at the AAPD. We're going to do a fun little kids week on acquisition unscripted. It's all about pedo, so it'll be fun. And then I'm sorry, we're going to do that on the startup side. And then we got a couple more webinars coming down the pipe. It's Get the Most Out of Your Hygiene Team webinar in October. Paula Quinn, my partner, is going to deliver that bad boy. You want to know how to get more production out of your hygiene team? That's the one you're going to want to watch. And the next one after that, we're targeting November, is 5 mistakes your front office is making. That's a good one. I bet all you startup folks are going to want that one. And that's really just kind of like, what are the top 5 things that your front office team is probably not doing and staying compliant on, that's costing you dollars today. So without further ado, thank you guys all so much. To get your CE, scan that bad boy right there. I saw some people bounce. They don't want their CE. That's cool. But the folks that scan this survey and fill it out tonight, can't do it tomorrow, but tonight, because this is going to be a live deal, Anybody that fills out that survey tonight is going to be getting some CE. There's also a link that was just posted that you could just click on if you want to do it on your computer instead of your phone. So get your CE. And then anybody that's in Washington will be at the PNDC next week. Guys, thanks so much for your time. I hope you had fun. I hope I didn't cough into your ears too much tonight. But I always have fun doing this, and I'm super excited to help you guys get into ownership when the time is ready. And you got to be ready for it. And we would love to be there to help you. And yeah, thank you guys so much. Pleasure being with you tonight. Take care.